A conservative Christian group representing 4 Massachusetts churches is suing the state over its transgender bathroom law. The group believes churches should be exempt, arguing it violates core religious beliefs.
The future of transgender protections unclear after a newly enacted law came under fire Tuesday, both in the form of a federal lawsuit and a question voters will face. Should it be repealed altogether? That lawsuit targeting the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination and the Attorney General, saying the law infringes on a church's ability to reinforce its doctrine when it requires a church to let people use any bathroom with which they gender identify.
They believe that the Bible teaches that God created each person as immutably male or female.
Christina Holcomb, legal counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the churches in Haverhill, Southbridge, Fitchburg, and Swansea, saying the Commission and AG have made threats against the churches if they don't uphold the law.
This is their own government that said, because of who you are and the beliefs that you hold and teach within the 4 walls of your own church, you could be penalized out of existence up to $50,000 or thrown into jail for up to a year.
Meanwhile, organizations that fought for the protection, like Freedom Massachusetts, calling foul, writing, quote, hundreds of faith leaders and communities spoke out in strong support of the transgender protections law this year. This lawsuit is no more than a last-ditch scare tactic to single out transgender people for the attack. People we talked to are split on the issue, some saying there's separation of church and state for a reason.
I like that the country's moving in a more progressive direction, but I think religion is one of those cornerstones of American society that really they should just be allowed to do whatever they want to do.
Others saying the law is in place for a reason, to protect against discrimination. Still confusion over how to enforce it.
Fines and jail, those just shouldn't be in the equation at all.
The Attorney General's office saying tonight they will review the lawsuit, writing, quote, we are pleased that we finally have a law in place that protects transgender people from discrimination in public places. This law is about civil rights and is critical for people who are without full protection and equality under the law for too long.
Move over, Sophia, Ellen, and Katie. There's a new cover girl in town.
Easy breezy, beautiful cover girl.
Actually, make that cover boy. Makeup artist James Charles is the first male face of CoverGirl in the company's nearly 60-year history. There are plenty of obvious reasons CoverGirl named Charles as its newest face. For starters, he's insanely good at makeup. And clearly, people enjoy looking at his work.
Thumbs up down below and subscribe if you haven't already.
He has over 70,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. But he doesn't just have a following on YouTube. He has over 435,000 Instagram followers, and he just created his account a little over a year ago. Charles seems pretty excited about the new gig.
So I've been telling you lately that I was working on something huge, and trust me when I say I did not lie.
Talk about a great start to senior year of high school.
Why should gay Australians be subjected to a different lawmaking process than any other of our Australians?
NBC News Online is reporting that Australia's opposition Labour Party voted to block a government-backed referendum on same-sex marriage. The decision makes Australia one of the last countries in the Western world to continue to ban gay and lesbian couples from the right to marry. Recent polling shows the majority of Australians support marriage rights for gays and lesbians. Labour Party leader Bill Shorten has also been vocal about supporting marriage for same-sex couples. However, this did little to change the outcome of a Tuesday vote where his party decided unanimously to continue to make same-sex marriages illegal in that country.
There is a new development tonight in the Dakota Access Pipeline story. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are now refusing to authorize and permit the continuation of the construction.
In a surprising turn, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says they won't authorize construction of the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline to resume. Further to that, the Corps reiterated its request to the pipeline company to, quote, voluntarily stop work on private land in the area. The Corps of Engineers, along with the Justice Department and the Interior Department, issued a joint statement essentially saying that the government was not ready to allow pipeline work on its land bordering Lake Oahe and the land underneath the lake. Lake Oahe serves as the water reservoir for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. RT spoke with the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, David Archambault II, just days ago when he was here at Capitol Hill.
This is indigenous peoples around the world share constant abuse from corporations and from governments, and they have indigenous lands and they have indigenous rights, and we're building awareness, and it's a movement that's arising in indigenous people, and it's encouraging to see that. That was the most productive thing that I've seen, where countries around the world are starting to realize that it's time to take a look at what's really happening.
The pipeline owners say they're committed to completion of their project that runs through 4 U.S. states. The nearly 1,200-mile-long pipeline has already cost $1.6 billion and is about 60% complete at this point. The Midwest Alliance for Infrastructure Now group, better known as MAIN, is a backer of the project. MAIN spokesman Craig Stevens is now calling on the White House to get involved to allow construction, stating, quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, to do otherwise would undermine our nation's regulatory regime and chill American infrastructure development, costing Americans their jobs and ultimately our nation its progress. On Sunday, a federal appeals court ruled that construction may be resumed on the contested site. However, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, along with several celebrity supporters, say they are not backing down from their fight to protect their land.
America now, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's allegedly enjoying unprecedented levels of support from the American mass media, according to new leaked emails out published by the investigative news website The Intercept. The documents suggest the media has been working closely indeed with Clinton's campaign to present her in a favourable light.
She clearly had come in very well prepared for this debate.
Very deliberate on her part.
Absolutely. I think is the best speech yet.
5-0. Hillary hit him on everything.
She clearly managed to get under his skin.
Trump's defenders say all men talk like this. As a guy who has no doubt been in numerous locker rooms, is this how men in America talk to each other?
After Sunday's latest debate, some Republican supporters accused the media of bias towards Clinton. Many major U.S. newspapers openly endorsed the Democratic candidate, with the words like a determined leader regularly being used.
On Tuesday, federal prosecutors said they will charge Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio with criminal contempt of court for defying a judge's orders to end his signature illegal immigration patrols in the state. The 84-year-old lawman and Donald Trump supporter now faces a possibility of jail time as he seeks a 7th term as sheriff less than a month before Election Day. Prosecutor John Keller said in court Tuesday that the government will bring a misdemeanor contempt charge, with the next step being a court filing. Arpaio faces up to 6 months in jail if convicted of a misdemeanor contempt. He will not be formally arrested, and no mugshot will be taken.
Creepy clown sightings have gone global, with dozens of incidents now reported in England.
Police in the UK have taken the unusual step of issuing warnings after a spate of creepy clown sightings across the country. Officers say there have been dozens of reports of so-called killer clown sightings in the last week.
We were standing in the pub and he was by the doorway and he was macking and saying he's going to slit our throats and stuff. So it was scary.
If individuals are carrying weapons, then if that is a knife, which is an offensive weapon, then that is against the law. So anybody found in Gloucestershire with an offensive weapon, whether their intention is fun or not, they will be arrested.
Sightings began in the US and have now spread to the UK, Australia and New Zealand. Some think the craze may be part of a horror film publicity stunt. Others say it's an elaborate hoax propagated by social media.
Why don't you guys come up to this barrier right here? Go ahead and put your butts against it.
New at 6, crisis in the Keys. An infestation of something called screw worm is killing endangered deer, and there are concerns it could be spreading. We want to warn you, some pictures that we're about to show you may be tough to look at.
Well, here's what's being done that you're going to run into right now. This is a check station here in Key Largo. Traveling with or transporting an animal, you have to stop. Agriculture agents are here, and so is a vet. Let's take a look.
Roxy.
What? This is Roxy.
Yeah, this is Roxy.
Hi, Roxy.
This is Gigi and Muffin.
And they're fine. They passed inspection.
They passed inspection.
All dogs, all animals coming out of the Florida Keys getting the once-over from state agricultural officers, looking for signs of screwworm infection spread by flies like this, attracted to animal wounds. Eggs are laid, worms hatch inside the wound, devastating infection follows. Key deer, the miniature deer that thrive in the lower Keys, most vulnerable. Monroe County Sheriff Rick Ramsey's deputies get the calls about sick key deer.
You see the top of the key deer's head just like a bowl shape, like someone carved it out. You can tell it's suffering, it's wandering, it's crashing into walls. It just breaks your heart. It's so sad.
The tiny deer, tourist favorites, and only found in this part of the world, usually discovered with the infection after it's way too late. 60 dead already. The tasks keep the screwworm spread isolated to the Keys. That's why this interdiction station is set up in Key Largo. The next move includes
the release of male screwworm flies that have been sterilized. They are not modified or engineered in any way other than to be sterilized.
The flies mate but produce no eggs.
And the paper also mentioned that there'd be a check station.
And for good reason. If the screwworm spreads to Florida's cattle industry, the state would face economic disaster.
And it certainly could impact the rest of the state by quarantine if, in fact, it spreads into the remainder of Florida.
So the river flooding situation in North Carolina has unfortunately been getting worse by the day. As you know by now, the death toll from Hurricane Matthew has climbed past 30 people, and sadly, about half of those have come from the state of North Carolina alone. And as Governor Pat McCrory mentioned, many of these deaths were preventable.
Do not go through water. We've had over 10 people killed as a result of that. We're not messing around, and we do not want to put people at risk to save you once you make that decision.
Now, some of these people have chosen to drive around barricades. Some people hydroplaned from driving too fast on these water-covered roadways. All very poor choices, guys. He means it. Pat McCrory wants you to be serious about this situation. President Obama serious too. He's declared a state of emergency for 31 North Carolina counties. And of course, we saw evacuations like this still happening even after Matthew had passed. In Moore County, officials have warned of an imminent dam breach at Wood Lake Dam near Bass, North Carolina. And then we had 1,500 people that were stranded in the hard-hit community of Lumberton, which prompted multiple rooftop rescues. The Lumber River has topped its record crest set by Hurricane Francis. That was in 2004. It set that record by more than 3 feet. And the Lumber River isn't the only one to cause significant flooding. Mandatory evacuations have been issued for all residents in the Neuse River Basin and near the Tar River as well.
Almost 7 months since the Daesh terrorist attacks in Brussels that killed 35, including 3 suicide bombers, and the streets of the Belgian capital remain heavily militarised. In the European Parliament, EU legislators have been told that the Takfiri terrorist group might be planning further attacks of a different nature.
Car bombs might be one, and we know how much they learn how to build a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. And there is a concern as well on the use of chemical weapon, to weaponize chemical stuff.
In a bid to help combat terrorism, the European Parliament rushed through legislation 6 months ago to allow EU countries share airline passengers' personal details. Gilles de Kerkhoff says Daesh recruiters are targeting vulnerable Syrian refugees who have made it into the EU. Kerkhoff says the problem is particularly bad in Germany.
In ISIS nuclear threat, the UN warning that jihadis are plotting to target power plants across Europe. This after learning that a nuclear power plant was targeted 2 years ago. However, that attack was disrupted by a militant cyber attack. How concerned are you about this warning?
Well, we've always been concerned about nuclear terrorism and the idea that somebody could be radicalized who's working inside a plant as an insider doing something, or actually possibly blowing up a plant. Now, for ISIS to have the capability to blow up a nuclear power plant, that's probably slim to none. Even an insider threat, it's very rare for someone by themselves to be able to cause a meltdown because there's so much of a team effort inside a nuclear power plant. People would be observed. However, cyber terrorism dealing with a nuclear power plant, that is an issue because their cyber capability is growing. And I think that's really what's got some people's concern. We've always been concerned about the cyber capability of terrorists. Think of this. In the United States, our critical infrastructure, financial banking, utility infrastructure, and our transportation system, they are vulnerable to a sophisticated cyber attack that our adversary countries have. Russia, China, to name 2.
Relations are worsening between Russia and the West over the war in Syria, and it's about to get even more complicated. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has cancelled his scheduled visits to Paris next week after the French President François Hollande said he wanted to hold talks on Syria. It comes as the European Union considers extending sanctions against Russia for its involvement in the Syrian conflict. Russia is accused of committing war crimes by bombing civilian areas. And the British Parliament is also concerned and will be holding an emergency debate on the humanitarian issue in Aleppo within the hour.
At the opening of a high-profile security forum in Beijing on Tuesday, China rebuked New Zealand's defense minister. The country criticized his stance on tension in the disputed South China Sea, saying countries not involved should not interfere.
To our fifth and final story of the program, China accuses the United States of intervention in Asia amid rising territorial tensions between Beijing and Washington in the South China Sea. Chinese Defense Minister Chang Wanwan said that, quote, some countries seek absolute military superiority and seek their own security at the cost of other countries' security.
Following the failed military coup in Turkey in July, patriotism in the country is even higher than it already was. But what does the unpredictable President Tayyip Erdogan have in mind for his country now? His decisions could have far-reaching implications, with Turkey representing the Muslim-majority country in NATO. Since the coup attempt, Erdogan's administration has suspended or dismissed 100,000 civil servants, judges, lecturers, military personnel, and police. Many Western allies of Turkey fear creeping authoritarianism, with a former U.S. ambassador stating he won't overturn the constitution or get rid of democracy, but he wants to render the opposition incapable of challenging him and to exercise clear power over them.
Just weeks ahead of an expected push led by Iraqi troops to retake the ISIL-held city of Mosul, and tensions have risen between Turkey and Iraq. Ankara wants in on the battle and refuses to leave a base where its soldiers have been training a multi-ethnic force for the fight. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi wants them to go, but Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has reacted angrily. He's insulting me. He's not even my same level. You, Iraq's Prime Minister, you don't have the same value. You don't have the same quality. Your screaming and shouting from Iraq is of no importance to us. You should know that we will be going our own way. Who is this, Iraq's Prime Minister? Iraq's Prime Minister, first of all, know your place. Turkey sees the battle for Mosul as an extension of its fight against terrorism and fears that ousting Sunni-based ISIL will leave a vacuum that Kurdish forces could fill. However, the Shiite-led government in Baghdad is protective of its own sovereignty, something which Washington has told Ankara it must respect.
Yom Kippur is being observed under heightened security in Jerusalem. The holiest day in the Jewish calendar, the Day of Atonement usually sees thousands of worshippers converge on religious sites in and around the city. But a gun attack on Sunday, in which 2 people were killed, has prompted the mobilization of extra Israeli police units. A 48-hour closure on Gaza and the occupied West Bank has also been put into force, the Israeli Defense Force says, with exceptions only being made for medical emergencies and humanitarian cases. Sensitive areas such as the Old City and here at the Western Wall, where Jews traditionally gather to pray, are under particular scrutiny, according to a police spokesperson.
A new attempt is underway to revise Jewish history. That's what art historian Victoria Coates claims the UN and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City are doing. In an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal, she calls out a UN resolution and Met art exhibit that denies Israel's exclusive claim to Jerusalem. The exhibit instead claiming the holy city belongs to Muslims, Christians, and Jews equally. And she says the UN will launch a more aggressive approach Thursday to define Jerusalem as a global city. Coates calls these claims a movement to delegitimize Israel's claim to the land.